All right, let's talk about Nancy Pelosi for a moment. Nancy Pelosi, I think, is going to prove to be the I don't know. It's tough. Chuck Schumer spent I don't know, close to $20 million making sure that substandard, non-progressive candidates won senatorial races. Amy McGrath is a perfect example up in Maine. Another example, but
Sarah
Nancy
Gideon.
Pelosi. Yep, Sarah Gideon. When Nancy Pelosi, when it comes to legislation, Nancy Pelosi is going to be a big problem, and hopefully, we are going to have enough progressives in the House that they will be in a position to deny certain victories to Democrats unless they get some of the stuff on their list that they want. We shall see. But here's Nancy Pelosi. I mean, look, there is not a Republican out there who is going to be swayed by Nancy Pelosi. This is the thing that these people don't seem to understand. I don't care what Nancy Pelosi says. There are basically two people who the right has spent the past couple of decades demonizing. Two women, Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. There is no Republican who's going to listen to Nancy Pelosi and say, well, you know what? She's sounding reasonable these days. Now, I think Nancy Pelosi has two problems. One, she doesn't understand that concept. And two, she's not just delivering these messages for those people. So it's both a performative problem and a substantive problem with Nancy Pelosi when she says stuff like this.
Because we are Americans, we're going to beat this, but we have to beat it scientifically. And in order to do that, you have to believe in science and you have to believe in governance. Now, our friend who asked the question about how they're going to lift up everybody out of poverty by taking away regulations probably would not like me to hear me say that they don't believe in governance. If you don't believe in governance and you don't believe in science, you don't want to do anything and you don't have to because you don't have the data that you accept. So we're in a very critical place. I yearn for other Republican presidents. While we may have disagreed on many points, at least we had a shared commitment to the governance of our country. Richard Nixon signed the NEPA legislation. So in any case, I said yesterday, we're at another critical point.
The problem here with this, and it is true, that Richard Nixon did sign legislation to create the EPA. And that happened, ladies and gentlemen, 50 years ago. 50 years ago. We've had, since Richard Nixon, a president who explicitly said government is the problem. His name was Ronald Reagan. He served for 2 terms. He had a vice president who served for a term after that. Government is the problem. He said it explicitly. George W. Bush followed the exact same game plan. They destroyed the EPA. They destroyed the FDA. They tried to privatize everything they could. The idea that Nancy Pelosi is citing Richard Nixon and who is this for? What is the value? There is not a single Republican who will pull a lever for Joe Biden because Nancy Pelosi comes out and says that Republican presidents have been reasonable. And I will tell you this, the damage it does is it makes it impossible for people who lean towards Democrats to understand that the problem is not just Donald Trump, but it is Mitch McConnell. And it's not just Mitch McConnell. It is every person in his caucus. And it's not just every person, Republican in the Senate. It's every person Republican in the White House. It's every Republican in the House. It is the Republican Party. It is the only party in the world major political party in the world that denies climate change. This attack on science is not a function of Donald Trump. It is the project of the Republican Party and the conservative movement for decades upon decades upon decades. It's indisputable. And the idea that she doesn't know this, either the problem is either the performative or the substantive or both. And I think it's both. I think she has a tin ear for politics, has no idea what decade it is. I'm not saying literally, although maybe, but I'm saying just doesn't have a sense of what the hell is going on. But also is fundamentally allergic to basically telling the American public what the problem is. And it's not just Donald Trump. And, to some extent, it's the Democratic Party, but part of the reason why it's the Democratic Party is because that's our leadership.
It's been Pelosi forever, for that entire time.
Well, it's not easy to do political analysis when you've got brain freeze from housing 9 pints of fancy ice cream.
It's true.
I mean, I thought
ice cream juggling on her mind.
I thought in 2016 it was a problem for Hillary that the Democrats couldn't say this is because they tried to do this before he even won, that, he's different than these guys. And it's if you can't be real about what this party is, then you're going to lose the people paying most attention.
Yeah, and to the point to who this is for, I mean, that soundbite basically, once Joe Biden is elected, if and when, just signals to me a new ad for the Lincoln Project Act 2, whatever it is, to rehabilitate Republicans further.
Right.
Oh, God.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
I think she's doing the 2016 thing, right? They're still making it a battle for the soul of the suburbs.
Yeah, I agree. But it's also she's the worst possible messenger for that in the world. That's the thing, is that I think there's a substantive problem there too, because I don't think it's just performative. Because first of all, no one's ever going to listen to Nancy Pelosi. They're just not going to. So she is the worst person to carry that message. But it's also, I think she believes it. I think she's just completely deluded. And she wants to protect, just like in 2016, the Clinton campaign explicitly wanted to protect Paul Ryan. They wanted to protect Paul Ryan. Schumer wanted to protect Paul Ryan. And this is what it got us. Because Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell were not held responsible for the candidate that Donald Trump was, a functional party would have driven a wedge between Paul Ryan and Donald Trump. And they would have made Paul Ryan, they would have put Paul Ryan on the spot, and they would have attributed everything that Donald Trump was exhibiting to Paul Ryan, unless Paul Ryan came out and said, I disavow him. That's what a functional political party would have done. They would have done the same thing with Mitch McConnell. It would have boxed them in. It's called wedge issue. It is the most basic tenet. But instead, you had Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton. You had Chuck Schumer bragging. He said this in October. People can look it up. I've got Schumer. I've got Clinton. I've got Ryan. We're going to do the infrastructure deal in October. And that infrastructure deal meant repatriating taxes that have been offshored by corporations for years, so they could pay a smaller tax bill. And he was going to put it into infrastructure. And they protected Paul Ryan. And she's doing the same thing with the Republican Party right now.